What's up, YouTube? It's your boy Marlo, and we back with another reaction. I seen this video. Well, it was a TikTok of Trump yelling at somebody, so I wanted to do a reaction on it. So let's get into the video.
Everyone, this is Outnumbered. I'm Kayleigh McEnany here with my co-host Harris Faulkner. Also joining us, Kellyanne Conway, Fox News contributor, pollster, former senior counselor to President Trump, and host of Here's the Deal with Kellyanne on Fox Nation. Culture Plus Group co-founder and CEO, Lily Gil Valletta. She's a corporate executive turned entrepreneur, an award-winning Hispanic market expert, and serves on a Fortune 500 plus public board. And today's one lucky guy, Guy Benson, Fox News contributor and host of The Guy Benson Show on Fox News Radio. President Donald Trump is fed up with Democrats and the media's narrative of the deportation of an illegal immigrant back to El Salvador, where he is a citizen. Trump and his team got the opportunity to set the record straight in the Oval Office yesterday, and they did just that as the world watched on. It began with a question from CNN.
Let's hear the question from this very low-rated anchor at CB.
Thank you, President. Do you plan to ask President Bukele to help return the man who your administration says was mistakenly deported? The man who was mistakenly deported to El Salvador?
Well, let me ask Pam, would you answer that question?
Sure, President. First and foremost, he was illegally in our country. He had been illegally in our country. And in 2019, two courts, an immigration court and an appellate immigration court, ruled that he was a member of MS-13.
Whether he go there and be in prison,
now, it was a
and come here, he's still going to be in prison.
Paperwork had needed to be done. That's up to El Salvador if they want to return him. That's not up to us.
Then Trump gave the floor to Homeland Security Advisor and, of course, a chief of staff in the White House for Policy, Stephen Miller, and he gladly took the floor.
Stephen Miller, wait a minute. Could you just also respond to that question? Because, you know, it's asked by CNN, and they always ask it with a slant because they're totally slanted because they don't know what's happening. That's why nobody's watching them. But would you answer that question also, please?
Yes, gladly. So, as Pam mentioned, there's an illegal alien from El Salvador. So, with respect to you, he's a citizen of El Salvador. So, it's very arrogant even for American media to suggest that we would even tell El Salvador how to handle their own citizens as a starting point. As two immigration courts found that he was a member of MS-13. When President Trump declared MS-13 to be a foreign terrorist organization, that meant that he was no longer eligible under federal law, which I'm sure you know, you're very familiar with the INA, that he was no longer eligible for any form of immigration relief in the United States.
Exactly.
So he had a deportation order that was valid.
Well, after that brutal beatdown, Democrats wanted to hold the administration in contempt of court.
The Supreme Court and/or the federal district court actually needs to enforce its order. And the vehicles that are available for the court to do that relate to contempt. And that contempt can be directed at a variety of different members of the Trump administration.
And some Democrats say they're packing their bags for El Salvador.
If I don't hear from him and Abrego Garcia is not quickly returned, I do intend to go to El Salvador this week to show solidarity with his family.
So, Kellyanne, you just pointed out Senator from Maryland. That's where I want to start.
Y'all going down there.
I want to start with this. The media has taken a very specific term in describing Abrego Garcia. Very remarkably consistent. Listen to it.
The Supreme Court orders the Trump administration to return the Maryland father who was mistakenly deported to El Salvador's notorious prison.
The Maryland father.
The Maryland father.
The Maryland father.
He will not return the Maryland father.
Maryland father.
The Trump administration claims it is not required to bring back Kilmar Abrego Garcia, the Maryland father wrongfully deported to a notorious prison in El Salvador.
The Maryland father, there's also a Maryland mother, and we have her picture up, Kellyanne. Maryland mother, 37-year-old Rachel Morin, who was killed on a jog. She had 5 children, and her killer was convicted, an illegal immigrant, in a court of law. I have not heard any of those media figures talk about the Maryland mother who was a U.S. citizen.
Let alone the senator from Maryland who now wants to fly to El Salvador to show solidarity with a Salvadorian national whose family remains in Maryland. I thought what the president of El Salvador said was absolutely brilliant as well. He said, your question's preposterous. I don't have the right to put a terrorist back in the U.S. And so you had both presidents agreeing that even if a mistake were made at the beginning, this man is now back in the country where he is a citizen.
That's what I'm saying.
And we have to uphold the rule of law, not just when they're trying to impeach or indict or imprison forever Donald Trump. We have to hold up the law at all times. And you know what, Kayleigh? I've about had it up to here. In the age of Trump, the media pretend they're trying to get the story. They're always trying to get the president and his advisors, and it's them who's been had. I am so sick and tired of these Democrats now sticking up for other people's citizens, putting America last. They're pro-China. They're pro-El Salvador, MS-13 gang member. They have never said the words Jocelyn Nagorny or even describe her. A 2-hour rape victim under a bridge by two people who should not have been here. Had they said Laken Riley, I went and looked it up. Has Hakeem Jeffries said her name? The answer is no. And they could not even stand up for her and her family when President Trump mentioned those names at his joint session of Congress a short month or so ago. So this is who the Democratic Party is. If they think this is their new message and he's a new messenger, last point. About 30 minutes ago, the White House put out an amazing document. It's public knowledge for anybody who wants to pull it. They have the pictures and the details of the crimes committed by probably 15 or 20 individuals. They're all male. I'm sure somebody will say, where are the women? We want gender diversity in the criminals. Everybody needs to read this document, Kayleigh, because you'll see what we're dealing with here. The media are protecting these folks over Americans.
They are. And here's the media showing a remarkable level of compassion, telling a compassionate story. Let's listen to that.
We've been following the case of Kilmar Abrego Garcia, undocumented migrant from El Salvador, married an American woman, has a kid, living the American dream. Until the Trump administration sent him to an El Salvadorian mega prison. You guys don't care about this guy. I'm talking about these two, but somebody else cares about this person. And you just randomly, with no evidence that you'll show anybody, called him a terrorist.
And the idea that we are sending, that the United States of America is sending innocent people just so that Donald Trump can make this point about how he is deporting criminals and animals and monsters, as he calls them, to this prison, when it is a lie. It is a lie.
What power do you have and other Democratic members to push the government to bring him home?
You know, Harris, I'll never forget a moment when we were sitting on this couch, and it was during Laken Riley's killer's trial. And it was her stepfather, and he read a letter that she had written to her future husband. Her church suggested she write it. She talked about and described the Christian wife she wanted to be, her dream of having children. And I've never heard Ana Navarro tell her story. I've never heard The Daily Show tell her story. We on this network have told her story. No one else has, but they're perfectly willing to tell the stories of non-citizens.
Well, I don't look to The Daily Show for my news, so I don't think I'd wait for that. But look, a couple things here. Why are people willing to fight to get criminals back into this country?
Exactly.
We can't even handle all the ones who are
like,
already on our streets.
Yeah.
Why do you want more of them and they're dangerous? And two courts found that this guy was a terrorist. And I mean, a gang member tied to domestic terrorism. Exactly. That's what they are. They're gangs. So you want to bring him back into the country, and then you want Senator Chris Van Hollen of Maryland to go there to what? AOC this and stand by the window and cheer for him or whatever?
First class.
Do these people know that they're not Americans? They've committed heinous crimes. And even if you don't believe it, can't prove it, whatever your situation is, two courts found that this guy was using his own words against him now, saying that you can't send me back, they'll kill me. Rival gangs will kill me. What do you mean rival gangs?
Rival gangs.
So
I thought you wasn't a gang.
Like, this is not hard stuff. He's telling you, show me who you are. Same thing with Dems. Show me who you are. You want to fight for the worst of the worst to be kept in the country? Join Van Hollen and go down there and hang out with him in El Salvador.
Exactly. Don't go to El Salvador. Y'all not.
You know, Guy, when you get to the bottom of this, Abrego attorneys, his attorneys say he's not a gang member. That was based on what an informant said, and he says that that's not the case. However, whatever the truth is of that matter, the truth that we know is he's an illegal immigrant. He's a citizen of El Salvador. He's in an El Salvadorian prison. And we're supposed to force a foreign country to bring him here, a non-citizen, illegally in our country, back?
Right. He doesn't have a right to be here. And it seems like we lose sight of that because we get hung up on some of the details about what
Just
gang
because they
he
want to
was
find
or
a
was not
reason
a
to
part
hate
of. He was in our
Republicans.
country
That's why.
against our
Like, and
laws.
they running out of
He was not allowed
arguments.
to
So
be
now
here,
they making
doesn't
a
have
big
right
deal
to
about
stay here.
this.
Now, it seems to me that the issue, and you're the lawyer here, so I'll defer to you, but it seems to me that the administration admitted in court documents that he was sent to El Salvador in error. He was not supposed to be deported to that specific country. We could have sent him really anywhere else, but not there, which is, I think, the crux of the argument here. And the Supreme Court said 9-0 that the Trump administration had to facilitate his return, which is different than effectuate. There's this legal distinction here.
Yep.
So we saw in the Oval Office, the leader of El Salvador says, no, I'm not going to do it. Seems like Trump is in no mood to try to press the issue further. And that might not sit well with a lot of people. I get it because of a rule of law question. But I think this is a diplomatic matter now. I'm not sure if the courts have much jurisdiction.
In a foreign affairs matter, I want to bring this up because we've heard a lot about Stephen Miller talking about the Supreme Court language. It's important for you all to see it. Exactly what Guy Benson said, facilitate versus effectuate. The order properly requires the government to facilitate Abrego Garcia's release from custody in El Salvador to ensure that the case is handled as it would have been handled had he not been properly sent to El Salvador improperly. The intended scope of the term effectuate, this is important, and the district court's order is, however, unclear and may exceed the court's authority. The district court should clarify its directive with due regard for the deference owed to the executive branch in the conduct of foreign affairs. Effectuate, making something happen, is different than facilitating in the event El Salvador decides to send this man back. Lily.
You know, as an immigrant myself, I find it ironic we're putting so much effort in one case in El Salvador when we have about 1.5 million highly skilled workers that are on backlog that we want to have in our country, and some of them have to be sent back. Engineers, scientists, artists, people like me that spend 10 years waiting to be naturalized as a citizen through the right process. Imagine if that same energy was put into repatriating that brain drain that we have. But the priorities, you know, get politicized, and we're chasing a ghost while we're losing talent to Canada, the UK, Australia, whatever, where a lot of these merit-based migrants go because we haven't figured that out for our own nation. So it's ironic, and those of us that have followed the process feel the pain of the double standard that comes with this kind of story.
Hey everyone, I'm Emily Campagno. Catch me and my co-host Harris.
My opinion on that, like I say, send him, let him stay. He's obviously a gang member. He's obviously a criminal. He's obviously wanted there. So let him stay. That's where he's supposed to be. But if y'all comfortable with letting criminals back over here and, you know, running around, we already got enough crime within itself. But, you know, that's a different topic for a different day. But like I always say, y'all, God bless you.